Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Pulse with BP. I'm your host, Billy Parvatam. Folks, I'm so excited today to be joined by Mr. Tom Hudson, the voice of the Gonzaga Bulldogs since 2002, almost 20 years, and especially right now with the March Madness tournament coming up. Tom, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Billy, it is absolutely wonderful to be here. I'm thrilled to talk to you. I really enjoy doing this, and I appreciate you reaching out to me because I love to share my experiences. I've had this unbelievable, crazy, magical ride in my job. It's been a lot of fun, and I love to talk about it.
For sure. Well, let's start off with first, how have you been handling this last year? I mean, this is a pandemic that has uprooted our lives, both personally, professionally. So how have you been dealing with this last year? And I'm sure it's got to be very exciting for you after 2 years of no March Madness to be heading to Indianapolis in a couple of days.
Yeah, we're so excited about it, and I think Billy, it was interesting. I talked to Coach Few yesterday on our Mark Few television show. He said, you know what, it's going to be difficult, but we're going to approach this and have an attitude of gratitude. We're really looking forward to having the opportunity to play again. And there's so many stories that we tell about last year. I was standing in the airport. We had already won our conference tournament, and we were back home, and everything was just kind of starting to happen. And we got the announcement when we landed that, hey, there are not going to be any fans allowed at the NCAA tournament. And so, as we sat there, we thought, there a lot of the band members, the cheer team were with us, and we were kind of talking how unfortunate it was. A lot of those seniors didn't even know yet that they weren't going to be able to go to the NCAA tournament, and how much of a disappointment that was going to be. So I told the people I was with, a lot of our administrators, hey, I'll see you guys on Sunday, Selection Sunday, which we normally do. I didn't see some of those people for 8 months. And these are people who are good friends of mine. So it was a tough kind of a transition there. We had a really good team last year, and it was kind of a team that caught people off guard a little bit because we had some grad transfers who came in and really helped out, especially the point guard position. So all of a sudden we were really excited. We thought we were going to get another number one seed. The tournament was being hosted in Spokane, so we were going to most likely get 2 games here in our own city. So everybody was so excited. It was a beautiful weekend. Coach Few and I talked about it. That weekend was just gorgeous. It was going to be a great opportunity to showcase Spokane. Our women were most likely going to host as well. So they were going to be at our arena. We were going to be downtown. It was St. Patrick's Day, the whole 9 yards. And so everybody was so excited. And obviously, that took a lot of the wind out of a lot of people's sails. And Coach said it was maybe the hardest meeting he's ever had. Having his guys in the locker room and trying to tell them, explain to them, hey, this is what's happening. And so yeah, it's been a long time, Billy, and it's been funny. This year I was fortunate. We made a decision early on that I was going to travel. As long as it was safe and it was something that we could do. So I've been able to get to all of our games except for one. We had one of the schools in our conference that wasn't allowing anybody in the building, but it's definitely been different. You're traveling and you're not seeing people, and restaurants closed. Maybe you're getting room service, or walking down the street to Subway and grabbing a sandwich real quick and bringing it back to your room. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. But as we've said time and time again, they got to play and they got a season in, and hopefully, knock on wood, we're able to get these next couple of weeks in the NCAA tournament for everybody, and we're able to crown a national champ.
What are some of your favorite memories behind the mic for Gonzaga Bulldogs basketball? I mean, you're so lucky. You've been to the NCAA tournament every year since you've been there, and I think about, I'm sure the 2017 national championship game has to stand out. You've been to Elite Eights, Sweet 16s. I mean, March Madness seems like every March you're going to be in the tournament. What are some of your favorite memories calling games for the Zags?
Billy, it's really interesting because, I was working in TV before I got the radio job. And so I've actually been here for this entire run. I've seen every single NCAA tournament game except for the one when they played in 1995. I got into Spokane in 1996. So, that part was so much fun. The initial, at the time, Washington State was everybody's favorite team in Spokane. I mean, the Cougs are, 60 or 70 miles down the road. And, to see Gonzaga, just kind of come up and grab this city, and just really, just make everybody feel so proud. I mean, we had parades here, after every win, the entire city was going crazy. There was all sorts of stuff going on campus. I mean, that was a ton of fun. That's the type of stuff that you'll never forget. But, then when I got the radio job, like I said, I've been doing it now 19 years. I've had some great ones. My first year on the air was the game, and I don't know, some of you guys might not remember this. You're talking about 19 years and you go back to college age. We played Arizona in the second round in Utah, and that was my first year on the radio. That was the one where they had Luke Walton and Stoudemire. We went to double overtime. It was just a fantastic game. That was the end of my first year. That was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, we lost, so sometimes you kind of, you have to come to that. But you're right. I think two things. When we went to the Elite Eight in 2015, that was a blast. I grew up in Houston. and we were in Houston for that. And to see Coach Few make it the Elite Eight that year and see that group, get to that point, that was a ton of fun. And then, like you said, and that national championship run to make it to the Final Four was unbelievable. I mean, just such great memories, on the basketball court, away from the court when you're traveling and you're seeing all the excitement and the hype. And, one of my best memories of that whole run was we were playing Xavier. We just had that thriller against West Virginia. We won that game, and then we got ahead of Xavier enough that you knew, right? I mean, we ended up winning that game by 24, 25 points. So the opportunity to kind of watch and see what was going on and seeing, our coaching staff and how much joy it brought them and our administration. I mean, one of the great things about Gonzaga, when you look at the top people in our athletics department, they've all been around for 20, 25, 30 plus years. And to see their excitement and their joy, and to see everybody just have an opportunity, because you're not in the moment like West Virginia. It's like, oh my gosh, the game's happened. This is so crazy. And then it took you a little while to kind of understand what you were doing. With that game, you had a second to just kind of to look, and that was really fun. And Matt Santangelo, our point guard on our outstanding team that went to the Elite Eight. So Matt was my color commentator at the time. And to have him sitting there with me, and he's in tears, we would always joke about, his Italian tears and all of his emotion and all of his stuff. And so, to see him, be so joyful and appreciating, the fact that this thing that he had started and was a part of was, now leading to the Final Four, and that the program had actually gotten there. I mean, those are some of just the best memories. And it, like you said, Billy, I've been fortunate. I've seen a lot. I've called a lot. I've seen a lot of good players. As a matter of fact, I was just watching TV. Steph Curry just had his birthday, right? We played. That's the last time we lost a first round game was in 2008 when Curry torched us. He really got going. So I've had a chance to see some really good players, and obviously had some unbelievable moments for Gonzaga.
And you have a chance to work with one of the best basketball coaches in the country, Mark Few, and you have a chance to work with him in more personal settings that people like me or the national media don't have a chance to see him in. So how do you describe working with Coach Few in more personal settings?
Coach is awesome, and I'll take you to a public thing to kind of show you what he is. First of all, he's one of the most competitive people that I've ever met. I mean, he is extremely hyper competitive, which I think you have to have the success they've had. When they came in, him and a couple of other coaches came in as assistants, and he was a grad assistant back in the late 80s, early 90s is when he was here. They kind of had the attitude of, why not? Why can't we build something? Why can't we make this happen? So they already kind of had in their minds, we want to try something that maybe nobody else has really done. And and then when you look at how competitive he is, it's unbelievable. And then as a person, the things he's done in our community, a lot of things that people aren't aware of. And going back to my story, the public part of it, when he was asked, because we went through this stretch, every time we didn't make it to the Elite Eight or we hadn't made it to a Final Four. And, that was always the question in one NCAA press conference was, is it going to define you if you never make it this far? Is this going to, ruin your career essentially if you haven't? And his dad is a pastor at a church down in Oregon. And he said, I've got a lot bigger things to live up to than winning basketball games. He said, I've got a dad who's done all these wonderful things and helped so many people. It's like, I need to be a good father. I need to be a good husband, a good member of my community. Those are the things that I want to be known for. Now, obviously, like I said, he's so competitive. He wants to win basketball games and he wants to win a national title and he wants to keep this thing rolling. But I think you got a glimpse into kind of how he approaches it. He's got a wonderful work-life balance that, I haven't seen anywhere else. And obviously I haven't been inside of a lot of basketball programs necessarily, but just, anywhere. I mean, we've had times, I've got young kids. I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, and there would be times we would be doing our coaches show and the babysitter would call at the last minute and say, sorry, I can't make it today. I'm sick. So now I'm sitting here with an 18-month-old and I've got to be, down at the kennel for the coaches show. And he would say, hey, bring him down. Because we've got pictures of my son or my daughter laying on the couch in coach's office while he and I are doing the show. And, it's just this no big deal for him. And that's the way it's always been there. His kids have grown up in the program. They're always around. They still are around. Our assistant coaches' kids are around all the time. So it's a great family environment that he's created. And it's just a wonderful mix that obviously has worked really well at Gonzaga because there's been a ton of success.
I'm sure everyone asks you, how do you prep for a game? But I'm more curious, how do you prep for a game during the March Madness tournament when you just beat a team and then 48 hours later have to make a turnaround to prep for an opponent you probably haven't seen in the regular season?
Yeah, that's going to be kind of interesting. And for our coaches, it's funny to watch how they do things. They do such a great job of prepping and getting ready. For me, it's really an interesting thing because usually right now, he's like, okay, I've got 4 or 5 days to get ready. And you get the internet, you start looking at stuff and waiting to get the notes from the other schools. And, and maybe getting online now, so different than when I first started. Now you can, turn on your TV and go to on demand and maybe find, 3 or 4 games and watch a team play a little bit and have a feel for at least, what they do and maybe get some backstories on them. And this will be a little bit different, because it will be, a Thursday night game and then you're going to turn around and play Saturday. We are playing at 9:20 Eastern time, which is probably going to give us a little extra time, which is going to be nice. But it's a little bit different. We do it. Coach and I talked yesterday. We do it in our league tournament. But for me, by the time we get to playing a team for a third time, right, all their personnel. You've been covering them for years. You've got a really good idea of what you're doing. So it will be very unique. And then honestly, Billy, this year, going to Indianapolis where you don't know if everybody's going to be there. I mean, other radio guys are great resources. You see guys from other schools and you talk to them and you get some information and, this guy's playing well, this guy isn't, whatever it is. Well, you don't know who's going to be there because, it is different. And then you don't know necessarily how much communication you're going to have with people. And we're still at this point on Monday, trying to make sure that we've got all of the protocols dialed in and how it's all going to work. So there's that hanging over it as well, that you're not really sure, how much information you're going to be able to get from, sources outside of just, something that you get from the school. So we're going to start working on it, I guess, on Thursday night or, whatever, Friday morning, I guess, and get cracking and try to turn that thing around.
Well, I was going to ask you, obviously, you're going to head to Indianapolis a couple of days to be in the NCAA tournament bubble. What protocols have you gotten up to this point? I mean, are you going to have to get tested before you get out there? What's it like once you're actually in the bubble? I mean, what can you expect heading to Indianapolis for this bubble?
Well, we're figuring that out right now from our standpoint. For our team, I'm not traveling with our team, and it's just not possible. The way they have it set up, I mean, the tier one, the players, the coaches, those groups are 34 people max, and they are locked down. I mean, as a matter of fact, I think being in Indianapolis, you've got 24 hours. We have to isolate in your own room. You can't even see anybody from your own program. So they're really locked down. And then it's going to be pretty much going to practice, going back. They can eat sanctioned meals or whatever. I mean, if you're together, you're going to be sitting, 10 feet apart in in a huge ballroom, essentially, is the way I understand it. For us, working on the other side of it, there's not going to be testing. There's going to be a health check, I believe, where they'll probably take your temperature. You're going to have to fill out some forms. So that won't be the case. But that being said, now you have zero contact. And this is going to be one of the really weird things. I've told a few people this, you may never see anybody in your program the entire time you're in town. Like, have a personal interaction with them from 6 feet away, you may be able to wave from them from the stands where you're calling the game from. But we will be wearing masks for all the broadcasts, which, is going to be, it's a little problematic. We do an hour-long pregame and we do, 45 minutes to an hour in our post game. So, sometimes you're on the air for, a solid 4 hours and having a mask on all the time and trying to broadcast it has been a little bit problematic when we've had to do that. But, again, we're playing basketball. So that's stuff that you can figure out and do. So, we'll see. They're really trying to keep everybody separated and really trying to keep it all, locked down. So, like I said, there's a good chance that, you won't see hardly anybody the entire time you're there, which is going to be very strange.
Are you confident that we'll be able to start and finish the season? I mean, before, this last week, we've had like Duke and Kansas, some of these other schools had to pull out of their conference tournaments because of a positive COVID test. Are you confident, having known the protocols about to go to Indianapolis, that we'll be able to finish this season and the tournament, no teams having to drop out because of COVID and all of that?
I really hope so. It's been interesting because I'm with you. I mean, there was part of that all of a sudden it's like, wait, Duke, they had a positive. Oh, Kansas, wait, Virginia, how is this? Because it seemed like we had a nice little stretch there, at least for the teams, the teams that we all know, right? In our conference, maybe some of the schools that people don't know, like the University of San Diego, they had 4 different pauses this year. I felt so bad for them. A handful of teams in our conference. But, from the major conferences, you hadn't heard a whole lot of that going on. And now all of a sudden for it to happen right when, I was starting to think, okay, hey, this is going to work. Now, we hear all that news. And so you're going back. I saw Dan Gavitt talking from the NCAA the other day, insisting that as long as everybody follows all the protocols and they get to the hotel and they follow everything they're supposed to be doing, that they feel really confident. I mean, Billy, I've seen some of the seating charts. Each team is going to have 3 buses that's going to transport them around town. So do the math. If you've got 34 people maximum in your travel party, you're going to have a full size, tourist bus that's going to have 11 people on it. I mean, they're really doing the same thing with the airline travel. They had everybody spaced out. A whole lot of that kind of stuff. So I'm hopeful that with all of those protocols, we'll be able to move forward. I've seen some stuff like Virginia might not even be able to get to Indianapolis until the night before they're supposed to play. So that's going to be interesting. But knock on wood, so far so good. And I think if we can get through that first weekend, the more that we move on, we again, knocking on my desk here, we'll be okay.
And I have to ask you, I mean, Gonzaga, #1 seed, obviously the bracket released yesterday. Is it a championship or a bust type of season? I mean, do you feel like Gonzaga has to win it all for it to be considered a successful season?
Billy, that's funny. I get asked that question a lot. And this is one place Coach Few and I really agree. And I know for some people it sounds like a cop-out. And I know as our fan base has grown over the years, they have kind of gone more with that. We've gotten that thing. Okay, we have to win a national championship. And then, it seems like every year for the last 5 years, I also get asked, is this the best team Coach Few's ever had? Right. And so there is kind of this expectation, for me, and I think for Coach, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he and I have had a lot of conversations about this over the years. I look at this season, and we go and we beat Kansas, and that's Coach's 600th career win. Right. And then we go and we beat West Virginia in a heck of a game in Indianapolis. Right. And then we go to South Dakota and we beat Iowa and Luka Garza and that team, and they're fantastic. And then, on 4 or 5 days notice, we get on an airplane and we fly to Fort Worth, Texas the day after Christmas. And, traveling on Christmas Day and beat Virginia, and then we make it through the entire season undefeated. Well, I think we're the 5th team since tournaments, conference tournaments have started since 1979. That has made it through a regular season and a conference tournament undefeated. I just don't think that you flush that down the toilet if you were to lose a game in a tournament. That's my personal opinion, and that's for any school. Like I'm not just saying that for Gonzaga or because of Gonzaga. That's my personal belief. I think at some point you have to enjoy the journey, and you have to understand that what your team has accomplished, has been phenomenal. And I think too, in some regards, I have a neighbor who's a huge Gonzaga fan, and we walk our kids to school together every day. And he says, hey, I would rather us go to the tournament and have a really great season and make it deep and not win a national championship than go 15-12 and get lucky to get in the tournament and then make a deep run. It's like, I would rather enjoy the season. And so, look, hey, everybody here's talking about it. Coach Few is very well aware, that we've got a great opportunity to win it. And like I said before, he's as competitive as anybody. He wants to win this thing without a doubt. But, my thing is, let's just say in a hypothetical situation, we make it to the national championship game and we're 31-0 and we lose to a great basketball team, that makes the year a failure. I can't get on board with that conversation. I know a lot of people are. I mean, and especially for us, because we still fight a little bit. You never play anybody, you never do anything. The numbers don't back any of those arguments up, but there's still kind of that, for some people, kind of that narrative that's out there. So I don't know. Like I said, I love the journey. 26-0 to me in a year that we're playing right now, and all of the stuff that you've had to go through to be able to play basketball games, I think it's pretty special. If you were to lose your first game on Saturday, sure, right? Okay, we can have that conversation. But in my viewpoint, if you're able to win some games here, I don't know that it's a bust. It would be disappointing. It would, but a bust, I don't think so.
And I was wondering, can you give us some of the behind the scenes of what it's like when you're calling these games in the tournament? I mean, obviously you're calling the games. What are you doing, especially in normal years, behind the scenes? Are you watching the other games? Are you filling out a bracket? I mean, what is it like to just be there for the experience?
Yeah, Billy, it's fun. It's a really cool deal. And especially, that first week. And we've been fortunate these, last, couple of years, several years now to make it to that second weekend. And so it's really fun because you get into, the town maybe if you're playing on a Thursday, you're getting it on Tuesday. And for us, it's an opportunity a lot of times for some of our administrators, some of our fans that are traveling, that are coming out, and you get an opportunity to enjoy the success and kind of take a breath a little bit and understand what the team's done and, celebrate it a little bit and understand. Because the one thing about the tournament that's really strange, I've never been in a pregame meeting where anybody's thought we're going to lose, right? So, and then all of a sudden, that's the crazy part of the tournament, right? And then all of a sudden you go to lose the game, and then you don't see those people anymore, right? The seniors move on, and the coaches go out recruiting, and everybody kind of goes their separate ways for a little while. So that week of the tournament is a wonderful time at the beginning to, like I said, to celebrate, hey, this is what we've done, and this is what we're looking forward to. And then that next day, usually when they have the open practices, which they won't have, this year, obviously, but, you're able to go in and watch the other teams practice a little bit. And they usually don't practice really hard, but you get to see their personnel, get, match faces to numbers and understand that and maybe say, geez, that guy's a lot bigger than he looked on TV. Okay. And that's something that you kind of keep in your mind. So that's kind of how it goes. And then kind of fine tuning, for me, my game charts, I usually like to try to get them done a little bit before I leave or to do them on the airplane getting into town. And then, if you find out a few nuggets or notes, and then talk to other people. Like I said, talk to the radio broadcasters, I've been fortunate a little bit to get to know some of the national guys over the years because have seen them quite a bit. Maybe talk to them a little bit about what they think. And then, then you really dial in that night before the game. And then the morning of the game, obviously it changes from kind of hey, this is a celebration and this is, good for us to, all right, it's time to go in there and really be focused and dialed in and ready to, to call a good game and to be ready, for kind of anything that happens. Because again, as you see, it can change in a hurry. That year that we were the first time we were number 1 seed and we went to Salt Lake City, John Stockton played for the Jazz, right? He's all-time Gonzaga great. And everybody had this kind of thought that when we went there, everybody was going to love Gonzaga. Well, we're in a 1-16 game with Southern, and Southern had a couple guys who could really play. And that thing was a little closer than a lot of people thought. And so, all of a sudden the fans there that we're expecting are going to give us a little bit of a boost are actually rooting for the 1-16 to happen because it had never happened before, right? So now all of a sudden they're against you. And then same thing even when we played Wichita State and we lost to them. It was, hey, the underdogs got a chance to knock off the number 1. So, you have to kind of be prepared for some of those scenarios just so you don't get, caught up or maybe lost in kind of what's going on. So, yeah, it is. Like I said, it's fun right at the beginning, and then you get, pretty locked in, and it's a whole lot of fun. It is. And again, I think to my point, going back to whether or not this is a bust or not, you see things. And if I go back to that Wichita State game, I think the game prior they played Ohio State, and they might have combined to go, 5 for 32 from 3. And then 2 days later, they made more threes than they had made in 25 years to beat us. It's a tournament and it's so, just perplexing and from day to day, it changes dramatically. And so that, that's a big part of the excitement as well.
And you mentioned him. I wanted to ask you about John Stockton. I know you weren't covering the team when he was at Gonzaga, but his son played for the team. I'm sure you've had a chance to interact with him. What's he like behind the scenes? Any great stories you can share about one of the greatest point guards in NBA history?
Hey, John's great. John is everything that you saw on the basketball court. That's him. I talked about Coach Few being one of the most competitive people that I've ever met. Well, John's probably a tick above Mark, if that's possible. He is get after it, competitive, great supporter of the program, but doesn't necessarily want a lot of accolades. And I think it probably drives him crazy a little bit because everybody always finds him. I'll get asked that all the time. One of the cameraman will walk up to me and say, "Hey, can you tell me where John sits?" And they always have to have kind of the, okay, look, here's John Stockton watching a Gonzaga game, shot on TV. He's very unassuming. He really is. He's quiet, like to think. There's some great stories. He still owns, or at least last time that I knew, there's a house around the corner where he grew up. It was his mom and dad's house. It's right around the corner from Jack and Dan's, the bar that his dad owned. They still own it and people still use it. They rent it out to Gonzaga students, I think. I might be a little bit off on that, but they still have their roots here in Spokane. After he retired, he moved back. You talked about David, played for us. His sister played for us as well. She was a very good point guard for the women's team. They have another sister who played down at Montana State, and then brothers who also played, other sports, in college. So an ultra competitive family. And, David's still playing in the G League right now and actually playing pretty darn well. But no, John is just, down to earth. We had him on. It was really interesting for a baseball game. We were calling a baseball game and he was there. And our former baseball coach is my color commentator, and he and John are really good friends. So John came up and sat down with us, and we talked for a few innings. And I just happened to bump into John later that night, and he asked me, he's like, "Hey, did I do okay?" And I said, "Yeah, you were great, John." He's like, "You sure?" He's like, "Because I need to make sure that it was okay. If not, is there any, when I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, man, it's like we were just doing, just kind of talking during a college baseball game, and John was still, really wanting to be good at what he was doing." And I think, he's really competitive. They still play a Sunday game that he runs, next door in the warehouse. It's a gym that's across the street that he still is completely in control of. And, some of our players, I think over the years, former players, we used to have guys that, a lot of our former players actually have come back and moved to Spokane and live here now in their post-playing days. And, they'll go down and play those games still and tell you how competitive it is. So, yeah, he's a heck of a guy. Great support of the program and a great support of our community. He's done some real estate development and stuff here, and it's really cool to see him come back and give to our community.
Tom, you've been so gracious with your time. I have two final questions for you. My first one, away from Gonzaga, is what's your advice to aspiring sports broadcasters trying to make it, especially during this pandemic? I mean, you know better than anyone, it's already a competitive business in normal times, and now we have to deal with the realities of the coronavirus pandemic. So what's your advice to young guys and girls like me who want to make it in this field of sportscasting?
I think there are a couple of things, Billy. I think one of the great things right now that you have access to, like I talked about earlier, is video, right? You can see games and you can go back and watch a game. And then you can get on the internet with a couple of clicks. You have rosters and, you have information and stuff that if you want to try to get in some reps, and it's not ideal, I get it, but if you've got a TV monitor in front of you, right, or your computer, and you've got some stats and you've got rosters and you know who the players are, it really gives you a leg up. I mean, I'm old enough that, Billy, we used to get our press releases were mailed to us. Right. So the sports information directors, they would, honest to goodness, I used to type my scripts on typewriters. But that thing would get mailed on a Monday and you would get it on a Wednesday or Thursday, to get ready for what was going on the weekend. And that was the access I had. You couldn't have as a student somewhere, the average person couldn't have gone and gotten that information. Now, like I said, you get in the internet, you can find all that stuff. And I think, reps is a big part of it, is getting comfortable doing it and seeing stuff. I recommend, for you and for people at your school, call your school's games, call schools you're familiar with so that you know the people a little bit and you're not stumbling or looking down to find a name or whatever it is. I think that's very helpful to help you to find some kind of a rhythm. I think one of the other things is really as well is to be yourself. And that doesn't mean that you can't watch and listen to other people and maybe take, some things from them and what they do. But I think that a lot of times what happens is people grow up and you're watching other people and there's a natural part of that. There's a natural inclination. I like, him, I like her, I like the way they call the game. So, you're kind of drawn to that and maybe you fall into those traps of repeating and trying to be just like that person. I really believe that you have to be yourself, and whatever that means. And I say this all the time. I know some people who are great and they get catchphrase calls, right? That sound great coming out of their mouths because that's who they are. That's who their personalities are. That's not me. For me, I feel like as long as I'm prepared and I've got my stuff ready, I will be able to speak. So like for me, it feels like it would be canned and corny coming out of my mouth if I had, a bunch of catchphrases and a bunch of stuff. Now there are words coming out of my mouth a lot because, they're the ones that are kind of ingrained. But if catchphrases work for you, good for you. If they don't do it. Right. And vice versa. Just, be yourself, be who you are. Don't be afraid to use stuff from other people because, there are a lot of great broadcasters out there. I love Jim Nantz. I think Jim Nantz does an unbelievable job. He does some things that I just wouldn't be comfortable doing because I wouldn't be good at it. But that doesn't mean that I don't sit and watch him and listen to him and see what he does and appreciate it and, maybe take some stuff. And so I think that's one of the big things is to really know yourself and know who you are. And it's okay to be you, and you don't have to follow and try to, well, this guy's successful or she's successful, so I have to do everything just like this. Be yourself and be comfortable being yourself. A couple other things when you're young and you're first starting, understand that everybody's not going to like you, and that's okay. Everybody has an opinion. People can voice their opinions a lot more today than they could when I first started. Same deal. You would get a letter in the mail like, hey, you said this wrong or you did that. Now people can, and that's okay. Hey, you're gonna have some thick skin because they're gonna be people who just don't like your work, right? Some people like Coke, some people like Pepsi. Neither one of them did anything wrong. It just, that's just kind of one of the deals. And so, I think especially when you start out early on is to understand that, once you get going, to find work. I'm a big believer. My career started in Grand Junction, Colorado. I went to the University of Denver is where I went to school. And I had actually met a guy who was interning at a TV station there. And I met the guy who was doing weekends, the ABC affiliate in Grand Junction, KJCT. And we kind of hit it off. He was over covering some high school state stuff. I was there as well. We got to talk. And he said, hey, put together some tapes, when you graduate, drive out and, give them to our news director. There are a couple other, it's another station in town at the time. There's some radio stations there doing high school stuff. There was a D2 school there. Grand Junction hosts the Junior College World Series. So there's some opportunities there. So I went out and dropped off a tape and talked to them, and it took a while, but I got a job. And so that was kind of where I started in a really small, I think it was 190 market, right? And TV, when I was doing it, I don't know, Billy, you may know better than me, it was 210, maybe 215, so it was a small one. But again, it gave me an opportunity to get reps. And I was able to call high school games, which was great. I called some Division II, football, basketball. I called the Junior College World Series. I was able to get my feet in and get a feeling for it and see, because I knew it's what I wanted to do, but it gave me an opportunity to see what I wanted to do. And so, for me, I think that a lot of people think that they're just going to jump and automatically find a Division I job, or, they're going to get a long season single A team if they like baseball, and that they're just going to walk into that. There are a lot of people out there that are trying to do what we do. It's a fun job. But I always tell people, you said it, I'm 19 years, right? So my job has not been open for 2 decades. So there are, obviously there's movement and that stuff happens, but, I think you have to be willing to look at some of those smaller schools, willing to maybe go to a small, city that you're just calling high school games. So maybe you're doing some sports talk stuff and you're getting, again, for me, it's reps and getting on air and being comfortable, being comfortable with a microphone on, being comfortable, talking to people, talking to coaches, talk to a high school coach, right? It's the same thing as me talking to Coach Few to a degree, right? I mean, you're talking to a guy who's going to have a say in the game and an impact in the game. So that's the thing for me is don't necessarily overshoot. I mean, if you see a job that's open, go get it. You can always move, and then, it's a lot better to have a tape that, right? Because when you're finding your first job, your tape's gonna be, like I said, maybe you guys go to a Virginia Tech game and you call it live, right? I mean, if you want to do that sitting in the stands, or maybe you're calling something off TV, but nothing beats, this is a live broadcast. Look what I have, here's my tape, here's whatever we're doing now. Here's my desk, here's my MP3. So I do think that, don't necessarily, and you're not going to make a lot of money doing it early on, obviously, but it's okay. But one of the best things about getting in this business when you're young is you could just let it rip and go do whatever you want to do. So don't be afraid to go and just find a job and get going. And I think those are, really my biggest ones. And Billy, and honest goodness, don't be scared to do what you're doing. I love it. I mean, I love the fact that you sent me an email and said, hey, let's talk. Okay, because the more people you can talk to and see, and you might talk to somebody else and get a little different opinion than what I have, and that's great too. Just to have an idea. Don't be afraid to reach out to people because people want to help. It's a great business. There are a lot of people that are really willing to help out and encourage young broadcasters. So I'm very appreciative that you did this. I really am. And if you want to do it again anytime, let me know. But I think those are probably 3 or 4 of my biggest ones.
For sure. And Tom, my final question for you is that you've been at Gonzaga for almost 2 decades now. You've called, March Madness tournaments. You called the national championship game. Maybe you will be a championship broadcaster even this year and sometime in the future. I mean, as you reflect on your career, is there anything that you would like to do? I mean, are you content? Would you like to be at Gonzaga for the foreseeable future? All being said, you're pretty happy with how your career has played out up to this point.
That's a great question, Billy. And it has been. I don't know that I could have imagined when I took the job. And to be honest, I think I said I grew up in Texas. And so my plan originally, after I had left Grand Junction, came to Spokane. It's like, hey, you know what? I signed a 2-year contract with a 3rd-year option. And my thought was, I'm going to work those 2 years and I'm going to move back home, be close for my family. And then, this thing happened with Gonzaga and they started rolling a little bit. I got the radio gig and it's been fun. We settle in here, my wife and my family, we love this community. Obviously, calling a winning team, I mean, my goodness, it makes it really, really easy. It does. And it's been so much fun doing that. I would be lying if I said that I miss calling football a little bit. That's the one thing we don't have. We don't have a football team. But I do get the opportunity to call baseball. We've got a really good baseball program and I really enjoy interacting. We've got great coaches that have been there for a long time as well. So I do get baseball and obviously with the basketball, it's great. So I don't foresee myself leaving. I love it here. I love our program. I love what it stands for. I tell people all the time, our coaches recruit kids that are easy to root for, that they're really good people. And that helps out, so much that every single time you meet somebody and you're talking to them, you've got a good feeling. And like I said, they make it easy to root for. So, I love it here. And I'll tell you this too, Billy, going back to kind of that part of it. I've had somebody ask me before, that was really wanted to make these jumps and to get to the national level and do that stuff. And I'm all in on that. If you want to do that, heck yeah, I would never say don't. But for me, this has worked out great. I love being here. I love the fact that, after 19 years, I've got this tie to our community, that I can talk, Gonzaga with people. I mean, they're always walking up, hey, what about Zags? Going to be good this year. We have this, we have that. People are always excited. And to me, there's a lot to that. It's a lot of fun. And so I don't foresee myself leaving here for a long, long time. It's been a great relationship for me, and I love it. And like I said, I don't think there's any shame in either way, however you want to pick it. I would never recommend people follow what I've done unless they're comfortable doing it. And if you want to stay in place, you get there and you get comfortable, that's great. Could you make more money working at the national level? Absolutely. Yeah, there's no denying that. But I've enjoyed it. It's been fantastic, and I've settled in here, and here we are, like you said. I mean, we're 22 straight years in the tournament. We go back and think we have this conversation every once in a while. There are freshmen and now sophomores and juniors at our school who weren't alive the last time Gonzaga didn't go to the NCAA tournament. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. But it's great here, and like I said, I think I'll be here for a while.
Tom, this has been such a pleasure getting to talk to you about your career, about your time with the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Best of luck to you and the Zags in this NCAA tournament. Stay safe in Indianapolis, and you definitely have me rooting for Gonzaga because you're such a great guy. So really appreciate your time today.
All right. Hey, Billy, again, thanks. I appreciate you having me. I appreciate you reaching out. And if you ever need anything else, man, let me know, because it's a lot of fun, and I'm here. I'm getting old. I've got knowledge, so I love sharing it. But thanks. I appreciate all that, and we'll talk to you soon.
That's the voice of the Gonzaga Bulldogs, Tom Hudson, since 2002, right before he heads to Indianapolis for the bubble for the March Madness tournament. Thank you so much to him for joining us. This has been the latest edition of the Post with BP. I'm your host, Billy Parvatam. Thanks so much to everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next time.